When I was around 12, I was playing the Bloody Mary game alone in my room with the mirror. A doll I had on a high-up bookshelf that never moved flew across the room after the third Bloody Mary. When I was 22, I was asleep one night, and a bright light woke me up. I opened my eyes and thought, why the hell is my mom or dad or one of my brothers in the room with the lights on at 3 a.m.? When I turned over and sat up, I watched 3 7-foot-tall greys walk into a portal. The last one heard me think and looked at me before it left. When I was 29, me and my GF at the time were alone in the first house I ever bought. It was built in the 50s, and I later found out someone died there. Anyways, we were watching a ghost movie, and I started cracking jokes about what a bunch of bullshit this is. That started a 3-night haunting that ended with handprint bruises on her lower leg that did not fit or match either of our hands. I actually have pictures. She also later told me she heard a ball bouncing and a child's laughter coming from the basement, and thought it was me messing with her. I was outside mowing the lawn. When I was around 30, I witnessed someone die from a car wreck right in front of me. It was middle of summer and hot. The air went ice cold, and I could see my breathe as well as feel the person in spirit, standing or floating right next to me, as if it was a normal person. The spirit then shot away, and the air returned to a normal temperature.
I honestly believe my family is haunted. So many things have happened my whole life, no matter where we live. When I was a young teen, my sister woke me up saying someone was in the house. We stayed up all night listening to what sounded like boot walking through the house. My mom had a boyfriend who wore cowboy boots, and that's what it sounded like. When my mom's alarm went off and came out of her room, we told her, but she didn't believe us. But a few weeks later, she heard it too. My grandparents' house, I came out of the room I was sleeping in and walked to the kitchen and saw a man standing at the end of the hall. I was so scared I just ran back to the room. No one believed me, but weird stuff happened there all the time. One night we were at church, and later I overheard my uncle saying someone kept ringing the doorbell. And when he went to open the door, no one was there, but at the exact moment, someone knocked on the back door. Walked to that door and it switched to the front. They lived out in the middle of the country, and the nearest neighbor was an hour away. Moved into a trailer when I was a little older. Also in the middle of nowhere, I was 14 maybe. Me and my sister every night would hear what sounded like whispering, but more electronic-like. The best way to describe it is that it sounded like a radio turned to a talk show, and it was down so low, we couldn't understand what they were saying. Couldn't hear it outside or anywhere else but in our room. We heard it so much we got used to it, even though we never could figure out where it was coming from. Also would hear whistling outside our window at night. Became an adult. My daughter would wave at people in our house, and when I asked who she was waving at, she said, "Mister." One time she was walking down the hall and said, "Excuse me, mister." My other daughter had so many imaginary friends where she described how they died. I really believe they were ghosts. Lived in a different house, kids are a little older. And my daughter described to me being in her room and a woman standing in her doorway with long, gross nails. My daughter 2 days later described the same thing, not knowing what the other had seen. Few years after that, we bought a new construction house hoping that would help. And we hear what sounds like someone running up the stairs. One morning I woke up early and walked into the kitchen, and I heard someone say, "Good morning." I replied, "Good morning. I'm gonna cook breakfast. You want some?" No answer. Checked the house and everyone was still asleep. But no one has ever been malevolent. I'm not sure why we have so many ghostly issues, but the worst was when my youngest daughter woke up to this weirdly shaped handprint on her leg.
100% true story. Halloween night 1983. A female friend and I. Yeah, I'd been friend-zoned, but good friends. Decide to watch The Exorcist at my parents' house while they were out of town. About 20 minutes into the movie. Not much even happening yet. But she starts getting kind of freaked out, so we pause the movie and just start chatting about scary stuff. I point out a portrait on the wall of a friend of my mother's, who had actually been murdered some years earlier. Being the jerk I was, I tell Amy the story of the kinda creepy-looking portrait and say, "Wouldn't it be weird if it fell off the wall tonight?" Ha ha ha. We go back to watching the movie, and several minutes later the portrait falls off the wall. No joke, it just falls with nothing and no one near it. She gets pretty freaked and leaves the room to go use the bathroom after stating she was too freaked by that to stay, and maybe I should take her home. When she returns, there are 2 steps down into the room. As she takes the first step, all the lights in the room go out. She screams and I had to take her home. 20 minutes later, I return home, and as I climb the stairs without turning on any lights, I'm suddenly viciously attacked by our enormous Irish wolfhound, an otherwise gentle and even timid dog. But she's snarling and biting at me as we tumble down the stairs together. Something had her very freaked out. I calmed her down and went to bed. Next morning, an inexplicable fire breaks out in the attic, which I extinguish with a fire extinguisher. Years later, retelling this story at a family dinner in the same house, my then fiancé says, "I don't want to hear about it. I don't like ghosts." And on perfect cue, all the lights in the dining room go out.
Back in 2019, I was visiting my grandfather in Rhode Island. I was 18 years old at the time. He lives in East Greenwich, and his house is over 300 years old. Rhode Island is famous for its colonial-era houses and history, so it's not uncommon to find a really old house. On the first day of visiting him, a couple hours later, I ventured upstairs to explore the house. I've always been a curious soul, and I went into my uncle's bedroom. My uncle was at work, so I was alone in the room. I went in there because the attic was located in that room and I wanted to see what was up there. There's a long hallway between my uncle's room and my grandfather's room, and my uncle's room was straight down. As soon as I pulled the ladder to the attic down, I heard the bedroom doorknob jiggling. It turned to the right, and the door suddenly opened halfway. I stopped what I was doing and I walked up to the door, peeked around it, and I said hello. No response, and nobody was on the other side. I brushed it off, shut the door, and went back to what I was doing. Once again, as soon as my hand hit the ladder, the door opened on its own again. This time I heard a strange swoosh sound behind the door before it opened. I was freaked out, so I stepped out of the room and went back downstairs where my family was. I told my family about this later on and they believed me. My mother and my sister both had many paranormal encounters in that house when they lived in it during the 1990s. They actually saw full apparitions of a woman dressed in a black funeral dress and a veil, along with shadow figures. Thankfully, I did not stay in the house long enough to experience anything like that. As for my encounter, there was no draft in that house and there were not any windows in the hallway, so I am completely certain that it wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was very creepy, and as a Roman Catholic, I am certain that it was demonic activity. I don't believe in earthbound spirits.
We had a house built in 2020, which was in the same place. A family died in a house fire. One family member was a paraplegic, a heavy smoker, and lived on the main floor. They were hoarders, and careless smoking caused the house to go up like a tinderbox. When we moved in, you always had a feeling someone was watching you. One night, as I was laying on the couch, I heard someone come down the stairs and into the kitchen. I called out for my young son, no answer. I called for my older son, no answer. I sat up and looked, no one in the kitchen. I went to the kitchen, no one there. Sometimes at night, we would get the smell of old cigarette smoke when watching TV in the main floor living room. I was napping one afternoon and woke up to an older woman calling my name outside my bedroom door. When I got up and looked, there was no one there. My sister is a sensitive and stayed in the basement rec room. She said there was an entity at the stairs glaring at her, and his name was Will. I scoffed at the claim because no one named Will was connected to the property. After further research into the family who passed, I discovered the father's name was William, and he passed away in the mid-70s. We hung an old picture on the stairwell, and it ended up coming off the wall 3 times. Each time, no one passed by to disrupt the picture. The picture was hung with a nail to a stud, with picture wire on the back of the picture. The nail remained secured to the wall, as did the picture wire behind the picture. We decided to not rehang the picture after the 3rd incident. We have had various occurrences, from the smell of old perfume to shuffling on the floors. We had an elder do a blessing and smudged the house. We requested the elder to state that the spirits are welcome to stay, as long as they remain respectful. After the blessing, occurrences have diminished to the point we have had only one occurrence this year. Smell of smoke.
This happened about 15 years ago, and I still feel it. There is an old cemetery close to our groomers, in a little hamlet. I was waiting for our dog to be finished. My little son and I walked around the cemetery, as it's old, interesting, and cows share in the property line. There is a mausoleum, with bent-out bars and trash within. I walk up to it just to look, not to enter. As I walk to the left of it, I feel this very heavy presence. It felt just like walking through a shower curtain. It wasn't scary, but I thought, ugh, I don't like that. It was undeniable. I believed there were spirits keeping watch of the mausoleum, to keep more vandals and litterbugs out of there. In time, the mausoleum was cleaned up. New bars were put in place. I went back several times, but never experienced anything else. It was River Styx Cemetery in Medina, Ohio. Thanks for listening.